This building does not have sprinklers,
Okay, so they're
so
unaffected.
this building does not affect
And then
it.
what about the plywood on the window? What are we? Is that part of fixing the
At this
stall?
point, it was closed. I was under the assumption, the direction that we just make that a closed bulletin type board or whatever and clean it up for now unless I'm directed otherwise.
Oh, okay.
So for now, it's closed. I mean, once these water closets, whatever you want to term them, are fully enclosed, we can consider opening it up just like we would the high school, completely taking off the wall so as to not give anyone a perception of a window.
And
I
is there,
would-
I'm sorry, Justin.
No,
go
it's
ahead.
okay. I would like to see them before we make decisions like that personally. I'd like to see the renovations complete and see what they look like
Right.
before we go into.
And that's the thing. We're not discussing anything with the front wall right now. That's
I-
going to
I
stay
didn't
as
know if it
is.
was
So we're
part of
just
it.
discussing stalls at this point.
And
So-
then we've talked a lot about privacy, and I think all of us have agreed that privacy in bathrooms is a great thing to have. Is there an intention to do this to the other bathrooms?
At this point, my focus has been directed toward this pair.
Okay, okay. I think privacy in all the bathrooms is a wonderful idea, so I didn't know if we could get a bulk discount and just do them all.
So while you're at the microphone there, so these would then be able to function the same way as the ones in the science hallway in the high school?
Yes, so we get
Basically private
very
toilets.
close to that aspect. It,
Yeah.
you know, as I said, it's made of typical stall material, so it's not a hard block wall or a drywall wall for that. It's 1-inch plastic stall panels,
Right.
but we'd extend those to the floor and extend them to the ceiling.
But essentially private toilets.
It's-
so
Right, they
that's
become
just
single
essential.
user
Yeah.
spaces, like
Yep.
like the other bathrooms that we have.
Great.
Okay.
And that door dimension was 79 inches.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, considerations?
I just want to say thanks for all the hard work you've done, Nate. I know this has been a long process, so we appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, so that's we're considering a recommendation to approve the manufacturer updates and options. So that's basically the approval for the 14,150 that Nate would need to proceed to getting those updates from the manufacturer and go forward to installing those. So with no further discussion, oh, wait, Mr. Beard? Oh, okay, so I get the microphone there. All right, Mr. Mummert.
Mr. Lighty,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
No.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Galzella.
Yes.
7 yes, 1 no.
Okay, moving on to 11A, Mr. Lady.
I'd like to make a recommendation to approve 11E1, 4, 5, and 6.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Lady, second by Mr. Smith.
So 11E1 is a recommendation to approve Southwestern football team use the high school cafeteria. 4 is a recommendation for the boys wrestling team to participate in the Tom Best Memorial Top Hat Tournament. 5 is also for the boys wrestling team to participate in the Carlisle Classic Tournament. And 6 is for high school to sponsor the Southwestern School District for bowling for competitions as independent bowlers for PIAA bowling for the 2024-2025 year.
Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Mummert?
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Lighty,
Yes.
Mr. Galzella.
Yes.
8 yes, 0 no.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend 11E2.
Second.
This is a.
Motion by
tuition-
Mr. Lady, second by Mrs. Brennan.
This is for a tuition waiver discussed in executive session.
Thank you. With that, we will proceed straight to a vote. So this was discussed in executive session.
Mrs. Weaver,
No.
Mrs. Bauer,
No.
Mr. Beard,
No.
Mrs. Brennan,
No.
Mr. Gelsinger,
No.
Mr. Lighty,
No.
Mr. Smith,
No.
Mr. Galzella.
No.
0 yes, 8 no.
All right, I'd like to make a recommendation to approve 11E3.
Second.
This is,
Recommendation by Mr. Leddy, second by Mr. Smith.
this is an expulsion agreement discussed in executive session.
Thank you, Mr. Leddy. With that, we'll move on to a vote.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Lighty,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mr. Galzella.
Yes.
8 yes, 0 no.
And I'd like to make a recommendation to approve 11E7.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Leddy, second by Mr. Smith.
This is for a tuition waiver that meets the requirements in our policy.
Okay. Mr. Mummer?
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Lighty,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Galzella.
Yes.
8 yes, 0 no.
We're moving on to 11F. Related to policy, we did have a discussion to update our policy related to
213.3 or 113.3.
113.3. Thank you, I appreciate that. So we will look to update 113.3 as far as the time frame required.
We do have a couple to bring back that were title related. We brought them and then we revised them and we bring them back. So they've been revised. We just need to bring them back for a second reading.
Okay. And others.
If there's anything that's major impact, let's make sure the policy committee gets it
That's what I-
before we
Right.
push it
That's
to the
what I'll
full
do.
board.
With the 113.1 will come to the policy committee, but the other one, the ones that we have that come back, they were discussions around some of the title monies, title policies. They were revised. We just need to bring them back for your second read and revisions that were made according to what the policy committee had recommended.
That's 113.3, not
Oh,
point one.
thank you.
Point 3 or point,
Yep.
yes, okay, thank you. All right, that's all I have for policy. Mental health and wellness, Ms. Brennan?
No report. Looking forward, looking futuristically, I'm potentially looking to having a meeting, probably after Christmas break.
Negotiations, Mr. Gelsinger. Safety Committee, I have nothing to report. Legislative PSBA, do you have anything? Nothing, okay. Solicitor's report,
Nothing to add to the report that I submitted.
thank you. York School of Technology, I think it's worth noting that our open house was Thursday, this past Thursday, right?
Yeah, 14.
14th. And I don't know how many attendees we had. The only other additional I would add, as we had our York School of Technology meeting yesterday, we did have a discussion. We didn't have a quorum to put action into effect, but in the future, we should expect to see a discussion related to them adding additional school buses to allow a shorter commute time to York Tech from all the districts, including ours, which it suffers from, I think, the worst travel time of them all, which in the past may have been prohibitive for students who wanted to go to York Tech. They are working actively to reduce that travel time. So that news should be coming to us shortly.
900 families, he said.
I'm sorry?
900 families attended.
900 families attended the open house. Thank you, Dr. Verheur. With that, we'll move on to LIU.
As far as the LIU is concerned, all the LIU board meeting updates we get through the email. As far as the York Learning Center, their next board meeting isn't until January, so.
Thank you. Recreation Commission,
No report at this time.
no report. Dr. Burkhart.
Just a couple thoughts. Most of you know, it's American Education Week. And so just the thoughts, I wanted to thank Ms. Pilarczyk again, and all the teachers. I think what you saw tonight was how they regularly push the boundaries to challenge our kids and to take them to the next level. And we appreciate them pushing themselves in that regard too. Also want to thank all of our staff, everybody from open to close every single day, from our drivers to our to our custodians, to our maintenance, to our administrators, to everyone, the board, for everything that you do to make sure that our kids are safe, to provide us a learning environment that's productive and that they're prepared for whatever challenges they face next. Now, with that being said, be sure to get your tickets for Murder at Manchester Manor, which premieres tomorrow night. I believe there is a community show this evening to work out all the kinks, although I would suspect Mr. Bull has them all worked out prior to this evening. And it runs tomorrow through Saturday. And also would like to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving and safe travels if you travel or if people are coming to you. May they travel safely to you. And all those rumors about snow tomorrow or Friday are not true. Take it from me. So I hope that concludes my report.
Well said, Jay. I appreciate the the considerations on the weather. On to Dr. Friel.
So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who participated with the subcommittees this past week for our comprehensive planning. Just as a quick update, we are in that phase of the process where we're doing what's called SET, which means we are really looking at the needs assessment. We had a survey that was available. We had about 230 responses from the entire community of Southwestern, which is not a huge number, but we had at least 230 responses to that survey. It's part of the process. That's what we did with the subcommittees, as all of you know. Thank you for participating in that. And what we're working on right now is now taking the needs assessment data as well as the other performance data. A lot of those other pieces we are crafting, our administrative team is crafting some potential goals and action steps, which will then become a part of the next piece, which will be presented in January. So you can, something to look forward to for you. And for the whole community, really. Anyone who wants to see the presentation is able to come to the board meeting in January where we talk about all these things and get some feedback. Still a long process. We're not there yet. March 31st is the date it's all due. End is in sight. Very excited about it. So thank you for that.
Nothing in addition to my written report. Thank you.
Dr. Cromer. Thank you. Dr. Seibel. Thank you. Mrs. Cortina. Thank you. Dr. Smale. Thank you very much, Dr. Smale. The elementary report.
Nothing beyond our report.
Thank you. Mr. Winters, middle school.
Nothing else to add, thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Downs. So I do have one question for you, Dr. Downs. I'm sorry to break the trend.
We thought he was gonna do it anyway, so.
It's just a quick one. The report from the nurses highlighted that they're not going to have a restroom to use for kids with the renovation. Could I get clarity on that, or?
No, they will not have a restroom in the nurse's office. They'll have to use the two restrooms up the hall right there at the music.
So they'll
it's
have
two
access to
single-use-
something for the kids, right?
Yes, they will. They just have to walk,
Okay,
whatever it is.
all right. That was
40
my new concern, was that they
50
have
feet.
access to,
Yeah.
because the nurse's office obviously needs access to it.
Yeah, there's two single-use restrooms in the music suite right there. So in the new addition, they'll have to come out, turn right and walk right up there and go to the bathroom there. But they will not have one in the nurse's suite like they currently do.
Okay. Do we want to discuss anything else? No?
All right, thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you. Mr. Wareheim? Not here? Okay.
Nothing other
Okay. Well delivered. All right, and with that, we'll go to comments, Southwest Education Association, Mr. Lawhead. Nothing beyond your written report. There you go. Any correspondence? Anyone? All right. And other matters for board consideration? We do need to briefly discuss under that how we are going to proceed with our reorganization meeting. I've had some discussion with some of the board members as far as the best way to proceed operationally with that vote in our next meeting. Rather than make it a race to the mic like it has been traditionally to first nomination, we have conferred with Dr. Dalton to establish a new procedure, which we'd like the board to consider and weigh in on, and that would be each of us getting several sheets of paper which have every member's name on it. For nomination, you each get one vote as to who you want to nominate. You would then submit that to Dr. Burkhart, who would then, because we have to publicly announce what we vote, that Dr. Burkhart would then read each member's vote towards who's nominating whom. And that would be the way you cast your vote. And in doing that, your vote to nominate is not influencing any other board members' vote to nominate. So we're basically just submitting our vote for nomination. Once we, that's for the nomination.
Okay.
And then for voting, we would proceed the same way in that you would take your sheet of paper, once we have the list of nominees, and you would cast your vote for who of the nominees you would like to elect. That will also be submitted so that we don't interfere with each other's casting, and then that would be read aloud how each one of us voted. That way it's still completely transparent, but we're not influencing each other's vote as far as nomination and who's being elected. Does anyone want to object to that? Or I think that's,
So just a question to streamline that. Does a nomination have to be public? I mean, obviously a vote should be,
Yeah.
but if we just read, hey, 3 nominations for this person too, I'm not that I'm against transparency,
So,
but
the
I just
wording,
don't know that that's,
so the wording in the Sunshine Act is very clear that all votes must be cast publicly. And so,
I feel like a nomination is different. That's the only reason. I
As
asked.
well as who makes a vote or a nomination, all of those things. Like, if I nominate someone, it has to be known not only who I nominate, but that I nominated that person.
Point
So
of
this-
clarification.
But there has to be a second, so that's why I wasn't aware to the nominations. So, like, I nominate Jay Burkhart, and then Rob has to second the nomination in order for them to become an official nominee.
So
We'll have to-
there's nothing in the Sunshine Act that requires seconds. In Robert's rules, there's about 6 different ways to receive nominations.
Point of clarification.
Sure.
So when you do that, so you say, okay, we're going to do president and we're going to do vice president. So when you hand them in, when Jay looks at them, okay, there's 4 for this person, 3 for this one. So 4 nominations. So then that would go to a roll call vote on that. I'm confused.
so if there are 4 for one and 3 for another, both would be nominees that you would be allowed to vote for. And then you would cast your vote for one of the nominees. So you have candidate A, candidate B. 4 nominate candidate A
On a paper ballot.
on the paper ballot. 3 nominate candidate B. And then those would be like however many get nominated, that would be how many nominees we have. Even if one person wants to nominate one person, they would be on the list of nominees.
So then it's not 5 votes the way it was before.
I would still by
You still have
votes
to have 5
because
votes.
you have that's the
Still have
nomination.
5.
The vote after the nominees, after we have our list of nominees, you then cast your vote
For
whomever-
one of them.
Yes,
Ah, gotcha.
okay?
Okay.
And that's the majority vote, whoever, and if we don't get a majority vote, what we will do is we will again say we didn't achieve a majority, and we will ask everyone to vote again. And if we get the same outcome where we don't achieve a majority, and then at that point, we reset and we have a discussion prior to a new nomination process.
Okay. Sounds like it'll work. I just wanted to make sure.
I just wanted to
wasn't
make it
confused
clear
on that.
where we're at, so everyone's.
So I may be misunderstanding. So in order to be a nominee, you would technically need 2 votes on paper. You're saying that we're not going by a second rule?
Unless Dr. Dalton can show somewhere.
And
where-
also-
Where seconds are required for nomination.
Right here, I could.
You know, I
Dr.
mean, I
Dalton.
don't,
All of our,
Dr. D, also you can't self-nominate, correct?
you could.
You
could
can, oh, you
nominate
can,
yourself,
okay.
yeah.
say.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because if we do it and we don't know who's nominating and everybody nominates themselves, then we have 9 ones.
And you could potentially have every person here nominated.
Mhm.
If you follow Robert's rules, that is one of the authorized ways of nominations.
I mean, I don't disagree. I will just say there are certain parts of the Sunshine Act that don't comply with Robert's rules. I know you've done your research. I did not know we would be talking about the nominations tonight. I could let you know more, but, you know, whatever Robert's rule says, there are certain, school code requirements that override that.
Yeah, the only thing the Sunshine Act discusses about recording of votes, paragraph 705. In all meetings of agencies, the vote of each member who actually votes on any resolution, rule, order, regulation, ordinance, or the setting of official policy must be publicly cast, and in the case of roll call votes, must be recorded. That's the only thing the entire Sunshine Act refers to when voting.
Right, and so when Mr. Gelsinger brought this to me and we discussed the Sunshine Act very, very vociferously, this is where we thought would be a way to cast our votes publicly, state who we're voting for, allow anyone to vote anyone, and to do so fairly, and at the same time prohibit one member's vote from influencing another member's vote. I think that's the fairest, most transparent way to proceed with a uninfluenced vote among us. But if you guys want to disagree, here's the time.
I personally don't think nominations and seconds would alter that idea. So if Dr. Dalton thinks we need to have seconds, at least for nominations, I mean, we're going to announce who nominated who to begin with. So if she feels that's a requirement, my main concern in the past, not only electing officers of this board, but as well as whenever we would interview people to replace members of this board, that it seemed to be a race to the microphone. And then the first person that was voting for candidate X felt obligated to either one, vote for that person, and then people's opinions start to get steered by the time you get to the 8th voting member. So by all of us writing down who we're voting for, we're not being steered by the opinion of anybody. The other thing Robert's rules removes is until the second round of votes, there does not have to be any debating or discussion. So we make our nominations and we vote. There doesn't need to be any discussion unless somebody doesn't receive 5 votes. So it will also streamline the process.
And just to point out for the public, the old process that we were using, many of us did not like when we were on that side of the microphone. We didn't like the process, and we didn't really prefer it when we were up here either. So that's why a few of us have been looking into a different way. And my understanding is that Robert's Rules actually does not recommend that old process, as it points out that the first nomination gets a benefit.
So when Mr. Kirby was appointed, though, that is not, we did not use the race to the nomination process, but it was also done publicly by voice vote, right? So I don't remember 3 people, and then we would go down the line and so everybody got out the nominations, everybody considered who it was. So I understand and recognize no race to the nomination or race to the vote based on whoever nominates first. I would agree. I think if we're going to write down nominations, then there should, I don't know, having a written second nomination is possible, but you could have a voiced second nomination to pull them in. It shows that it's support from the board from more than just say you nominate yourself, that you have support from the board for more than one person. If you don't get the second, the nomination fails. I mean, that's the essence of
So
the election.
let's do nominations the way we used to do it, where it's a second required. So somebody nominates, somebody seconds, no discussion. If there's 4 people nominated for president, then we vote on ballot with our names on the ballot. That way, because it has to be publicly cast. That way, my vote is not going to steer Mrs. Weaver's vote.
I think a second just convolutes it needlessly. You still have a vote after the nomination procedure.
I think it's important to remember that this is an election, though. It's not like you're voting on something. You're electing your officers. So
It is
I
up to
highly recommend that there be a different process than just what Robert's Rules recommends. But that's I do suggest a second.
I agree
Well-
with Mr. Gelsinger's second if we just, anybody's free to nominate and get a second, and then once we're done all nominating something, then we do a
Then we
paper
vote.
ballot vote. I think that gets to the point of what we're doing.
Yeah.
And still streamlines it and gets the second in that we want.
Well, because think about it this way, if you nominate somebody and they don't get a second, they're not gonna win.
Mhm.
So that's one way to look at it. So I don't mind having a second for the nominations. What I was trying to really steer away from is saying, okay, the first nominee was Mr. Lighty. All in favor, vote for Mr. Lighty. Well, all of a sudden he got 4 votes and I'm the swing vote. And it's like, man, do I want to be that guy?
Right.
So this way, it's actually on it's not a secret ballot. You can't use that term. It'll be public who everybody votes for, but my vote will not steer the opinion of anybody else's.
I concur. I do think the last few to vote in the process have always suffered of the, especially when you get to 4, that last vote is the deciding vote, and the remaining 4, their vote is basically null and void, which is why I think the paper submission of it lends more weight to your decision without it being influenced by what's already happened.
It sounds to me like the nominations and seconds, and then you can vote on those. That
Okay.
sounds like it streamlines it the best.
Okay.
The way Keith and Justin were just talking about.
Okay.
So point of information, you're saying nomination second. Who else? Anybody have it? Nomination second. Anybody else? Nomination second until there's no more nominations, and then that is the foundation of a vote?
Right, so then there's 3, so then everybody picks one of those 3 to vote
Another
on.
round of
Right, a
voting.
separate round of voting,
Yeah.
right?
So if there's 3 people that receive nominations and seconds, if there's 3 people that receive nominations and seconds, that's whenever we would go to our ballots per se, with our names on it. We would select who we're voting for and pass them in. And if anybody receives 5 votes, there's your president. If they don't, then we need to have a discussion.
And then we do the same thing again for vice president.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that streamlines it.
And furthermore, I think this is also a procedure we should adopt for appointments and anything else similarly related. I think it's just a fairer means of adopting, a
Yeah,
procedure.
I do remember the race to the
Right.
mic before with, whether it was interviews or whatever. Yeah, I do remember that. So yeah, I think this does make sense.
Okay. So that's, unless we get legal proof that we can't proceed in that fashion, and I'll ask you, Dr. Dalton, to,
Does this
if
way
you can
sound
locate
better?
a legal, prohibition against that, obviously, please let us know.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Okay. With that, we'll go to second round of visitors. And we have 1, 2, looks like 3. We'll start with Miss Helga Anderson for general.
Hi, Helga Anderson, taxpayer resident. First, I would like to thank you for reminding me that I still have a sense of humor. The saying, keep on trucking, means to persist with something tedious, and I have indeed done that, and have actually followed your example from previous years. However, I have not been slinging mud. My statements have not been malicious or slanderous, just truthful, logical questions from an opposing viewpoint. What I have come to realize is that some of you believe that any opposing viewpoint is mudslinging, even when it comes from a fellow board member and is expressed respectfully. I would like to point out that when Mrs. Curlin spoke about the classroom library policy, she was not being repetitive. She was reporting on the direct result of your policy, which should be considered. Education is data-driven, as evidenced by grades, testing, etc. I would have expected to hear all the data which proves that your policy has been effective. This would include how many books were in the classroom libraries prior to the policy, how many are there now, the number of requests made by parents, etc. That data could prove how successful and time-worthy your policy has been. When a new policy is put in place, you should expect a later report or discussion. about the success or failure of the policy. That is part of the education system. Your statement that you have answered our questions may have been a bit of a deflection. The last meeting was the first time that I spoke of the possibility of a social media policy for board members, or that they should be held to the same policy as teachers. That question has not been answered or addressed publicly. I have to say that I was surprised that no one on the board was willing to address the issue, since I do think that most of you have been respectful. Acknowledging that some inappropriate comments were made, or saying that you will or will not take the possibility of a policy under consideration, would be more appropriate than dead silence or saying that you have answered our questions. I'm sure that there will be a lecture about freedom of speech, but shouldn't the teachers then be accorded the same? I believe you should follow the same rules as the educators. I wonder how many of the board members have been included in meetings with the Independence Law Center. How many of you were involved in the meeting when they recommended the window in the bathroom? I'm sure that you realize that they publicly denied making that recommendation. Is there a plan for more involvement by all members so that cannot happen again? We have not seen any transparency in this area. I also found it interesting that you have special meetings to approve field trips, yet the timeline of the construction of the bathroom window can't be verified due to verbal orders and in-house construction. To quote Mr. Galizella, "We didn't vote before demolition, we're voting on it now, and we operate from that place very frequently." Should a school board president very frequently be making unilateral decisions? I do apologize to the school board members who have been respectful. I know that all of you are spending an unbelievable number of hours looking at budgets and trying to make difficult decisions, and I applaud you for that. Unfortunately, there is no forum for discussion, and I find it awkward to speak and be spoken to with no way to dialogue with the hope to reach understanding. It also creates the repetitiveness that you complain about when I must wait until the next meeting to respond. Please understand that I am passionate about the importance of education and believe that Southwestern has excellent teachers and staff. Rest assured that I will continue to truck up to the microphone to support them and get answers to my questions. Thank you.
Stephen Carr, Manheim Township. So I'll just point out a few factors. Policy 006 on meetings. Mr. Ilse says that they do not have to, that you should not be going back and forth with them. Not only that, is that according to Ms. Curlin over here, who keeps repeating that she's waiting for the information that LLC was given to the board members. That's also on meeting 006, where all board members are allowed to seek litigation and potential from attorney to protect students and the board members and administration. And they're allowed to see that. That's why it's executive session and then it's private to protect the people. So if you're asking for information outside of a public meeting or a public school board meeting, you're going to have to meet with somebody else with that. The other thing I had was referring back to last meeting regarding very retroactively and the administration not getting the paperwork in time. Is there a way that we can get a timeline or set a date where they can get it in time so the board can actually approve and not have the back and forth conversation they had before? The other thing was that the renovation for the school was $75 million. Shouldn't the bathroom and sink and fan should have been included in that price instead of the $5,888.51 that is being exempt from the total price? What else did I have in here? And the 12 new boards that we have up costed $28,000. Do we have that amount to spend more in the technology budget? And just to go over things, what if the power goes out, or power goes out for a few weeks or so, and it is plugged and the view boards are plugged up? How is the data backed up into the laptop or into the board? What's going to happen for that week? And what grades are going to be piling this? And how much do we have in the technology budget as well? And if feel as the recommendments of, hold on. Oh, I'll just end on a positive note. So, since I can't read my writing that well, so I saw on the agenda that Michael Resitar, or Coach Resitar, is resigning or leaving us. I am sad but shocked to see that, because I graduated in 2007, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but he is a old dinosaur. And he is actually a good baseball coach. He's been coaching baseball since I was in school in 2007, and I actually entered high school like 2003. So I'm shocked to see him leave, but he deserves a well send off.
Okay, and lastly, Ms. Nancy Martin.
Hello, everyone. Still doing my death cleaning. Didn't bonk myself in the head this week. I'm Nancy Mort, taxpayer, resident, parent of a student, grandparent of a student, sorry. I'm kind of all over the place today, and I want to thank Mrs. Anderson. She brought up a lot of the things that I'm going to be talking about. And Mr. Carr, I just wanted to clarify, you said, Mrs. Anderson can't ask for the private information. She didn't. She just asked which board members were in the meeting. She didn't ask what was said well, Ms. Curlin didn't speak tonight, so.
Mr. Carr.
Okay, anyway, not allowed to do that. Mr. Carr brought up policy 006, and I have that on my list to bring up because way back when policy 006 was finalized in February of 24. For those of you who don't know, 006 covers the agenda, the items that are on the agenda, what happens during each agenda item. And it was, I believe, early September or late August, after I had spoken 2 times, that Mr. Galizela said, this is where we've added in the response section. And, that's great, even though you guys don't actually respond, but there was no policy change. If you're going to add something to the agenda, there's a policy that dictates what the agenda looks like. There should have been a policy change. It should have been handled just like any other change that happens. If that happened and I missed it, let me know. You can do that in the end in the response part when you're answering questions. It would have been nice to know. Another question I would love to hear the answer to, because I want to make sure I heard this correctly, Mr. Galizela, tonight. We were talking about the bathrooms, and I think you said after the stalls are finished that you would just take down the whole wall to eliminate the window issue. I know you can't answer me now, but maybe when we get to the response period, you could just clarify that for me, because I'm not sure that I heard it correctly. As far as waiting to respond, it is tough. It is awkward to have a board member say something to me in response to what I said, and I don't have a way to respond until the next meeting. But I am going to respond to Mr. Beard's comments from last time. Mr. Beard, at the end of the last meeting, I told you, go ahead and shoot me an email, and I'd be happy to explain to you why I don't stand for the pledge. You didn't. So my guess is that you didn't really want to know why I don't stand for the pledge, but really you were just trying more to point me out, humiliate me, embarrass me, question my patriotism, which you did, which I don't understand. I don't, especially as someone who served in the military. You understand what the First Amendment allows. So to question why someone is exercising their First Amendment rights is just weird to me. I don't understand why are you questioning me and not questioning anybody else who's using their First Amendment rights as well. So I just wanted to clarify that. But again, shoot me an email and I'd be happy to have a discussion with you about that. someone else did this work, not me. I trust them. I believe it's accurate, but you can always fact check it. Before the most recent spate of members became board members, between 8/25/21 and 11/1/23, there were 48 regular or planning meetings. And that new spate of board members spoke 34 times individually, with more than one of you speaking at each meeting. That ended up being 88 times in those 48 meetings that Mrs. Bauer, Mr. Beard, Ms. Brennan, Mr. Galazala, Mr. Gelsinger, Mr. Lighty, and Mr. Smith kept trucking up to the mic, spinning their wheels and slinging mud. So that's, it's interesting that after, I don't know, 6 meetings with 3 people doing it, it's not okay anymore. It was okay for you guys, but now I'm not sure why it's not okay anymore.
1 minute, ma'am.
And I think my only other question is policy 249, which is the bullying policy. Bullying includes a power imbalance. It's not, a lot of kids think bullying is, well, you didn't like my shirt. That's not bullying. We know that. And there's not a power imbalance here. I know some of you think that there is, that the board has more power, but in truth, I mean, if anyone has power, it's me. Because you guys work for me. You're my elected officials. So I would appreciate, not that I have a lot of recourse now, in another year I will, but I would appreciate in the meantime that the condescension, the beration, the singling out of people, and just the behavior that's not helping us function well would stop. Thank you. Oh, sorry, one last question that you can answer for me. The survey, Mr. Dr. Friel, sorry. Will those responses be published, the survey responses? I know you said you had a presentation, but I don't know what happens with the survey information. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to weigh in, sir? Please provide your,
Curlin,
I'm sorry,
Bob Curlin, and I am type.
can you provide your address so we can verify you live in the district?
Yeah,
I
it's
prefer your
Northview
address.
Drive,
I'm sorry,
Northview Drive, Hanover.
Northview Drive?
I was intrigued by the process you were suggesting with the nominations, and I was going to say that I liked the approach. I was impressed with that thought process. I'll go a step further and with Dr. Dalton's thoughts about the seconding process. If you do a paper ballot and you have only one person nominated, then I would treat that as a failure with the lack of a second. If you have multiple people, then you could probably use those as the seconds and have that proceed then into the vote. So that was my thinking, and that would be, I think, a good approach. So that's all I have.
I saw another hand back there. Yes, ma'am.
Amanda Bonnet,
And your address, ma'am?
Baltimore Street in Penn Township.
Thank you.
Okay. At the end of the last planning meeting, Mr. Gelazella said that he was tired of the same people trucking up to the mic and slinging mud on the same topics. Well, I just wanted to let you all know that I'm tired of it too. I am tired because the brave women who stand up here and call you to account shouldn't have to do that. I'm tired most of this board refuses to recognize that you were elected to represent all students and families and administrators and teachers, staff within Southwestern, not just those that agree with you politically. We sit here month after month watching you waste countless hours and ridiculous amounts of money to disenfranchise what amounts to less than 1% of our students. I'm tired of hearing you say that it's all about parental rights when you're actually taking away parents' rights to have their child attend a school that is safe for them and that is free of religious ideology and provides the critical thinking skills they will need to be successful adults. I am tired of board members disregarding their own policies and procedures when it is convenient for them, but not when it comes to anyone with alternative views. I am sick of board members denigrating those who call them to account instead of listening and considering what those people have to say. And finally, I am tired of this board complaining about people coming to the mic to hold them to account, because that's what we have to do. It's our right. And that's what we have to do to work and protect the students and the families of this district from some of the discriminatory things that we have seen and heard come from this board. Fire away.
Anyone else? Sure.
Since my name was mentioned, I kind of feel the need now to come up and speak. Kit Curlin, Penn Township, taxpayer. First of all, I loved the presentation tonight on the view board. And I should start by saying thank you for the opportunity to speak. The technology looks phenomenal and would truly seem to enhance our students' learning. I hope the funding is available, and I hope we continue to get presentations and reports like that. Something that's helping all of our students. I only wish I felt as positive about tonight's presentation on the middle school bathrooms. I'm going to rehash it. The bathroom issue isn't resolved. We now have a total, and my numbers might be off, I'm adding quickly here, but it seems like it's a total $22,800 plus labor, because tonight it was only for parts and materials. There was no real discussion on the front wall. Sounds like it's going to be delayed, but it sounds like a real possibility that the windows may once again be opened. And once again, I would like the board to not open those windows up unless the same viewing ability is going to be in all bathrooms. Once again, I fear our most vulnerable students are the ones that are being targeted here. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. We're now to the section where we did create. As the board president, I managed the meeting. If it would make some of you feel more comfortable if we added a number in there that said board response, just to placate you, we can certainly ask Dwayne to add board response in after visitors section. But we have continued to state what we do at this point, which is provide a response if we feel it's necessary. So with that, do any board members have anything they wish to say? Mr. Beard?
Ms. Mart? My school board email is available on the website, on the school website, or if you prefer not to use that, I'd be happy to accept any comments you may have in hard copy. But thank you.
Point of order.
Anyone else?
Just to clarify, because everybody keeps throwing policy 006 out there. The first paragraph clearly states, all board meetings will be conducted in an orderly and business-like manner, Robert's Rules of Order. If you read the latest edition of Robert's Rules, it specifically says that at the end of the meeting, at the end of public comments, it's preferred to have board members make responses to the public comments. It does not say to have a back and forth. So it does not need to be added to the agenda. It's already in Robert's Rules, clearly. And to answer Mr. Carr's question, I'm not going to lie, some of those questions were a little confusing to me, but the one I did want to clarify was all of those smart screens that was presented tonight is potentially for the high school. So you asked what grades. So the current plan is to do it during the high school renovation.
I also wanted to bring that up. He had a question about power outages, and obviously if there's power outages, we have to make concessions, and that's just the way it is. But would these be on any kind of backup, or would they be, I mean, obviously we have backup generators, but it probably wouldn't be running this if we were in a power outage situation.
Our Wi-Fi is on backup, and then anything you do on there is automatically geared right to Google Drive, so it's automatically backed up.
Right, but the TV probably wouldn't run if you plugged it into a regular outlet.
It'll stop.
Right.
Almost everything that we have.
Right, but again, power outages will have to make all kinds of exceptions, so. Bob, I do want to thank you. That was a good idea with the nominations. I think if we were going to continue with the ballot, that would be a good idea. As far as a few people mentioned the restrooms, and as we noted that we would not be talking about whether or not we would open the window / remove the wall until the renovations were done. But that is the whole point of these renovations, is that these will be single user restrooms, as stated before. And if you go back to my presentation a few weeks ago, that is the guide from the experts for inclusive restrooms, is that we have oversight and individual stalls to protect everyone. So I'm not really sure why we're upset about this. We're going through hoops to make this a comfortable space for everyone. I mean, we've heard glowing reviews from the similar area in the high school. The fact that a boy can go to the restroom right next to a girl, they can have a conversation, go to the bathroom, come back out, wash their hands together, and not feel uncomfortable is fantastic. I think that's the goal probably for every restroom in the future. Obviously, we can't make these restrooms or renovations to every restroom right now. So it's a process. We just keep going and plugging away as we can get one done, we will. If there's a renovation, we can get some more things done. This building just had a renovation, so we were able to adapt one restroom for the time to meet that standard, and then we'll proceed as we can go forward. But again, my presentation, that's the restroom of the future, and we'll work on it. Another thing, your comments about ILC, as Mr. Carr pointed out, we talk with them in executive session, and there's a reason it's an executive session. I mean, that's all I have.
Just to add on a little bit there, privacy is paramount to protecting all students. We are somewhere between 4,300, 4,400 students, give or take, depending on the year, to protect all of them. Yeah, privacy is paramount. What if it was $500,000? I mean, what if it was? To protect all students, to guarantee that. Okay, then. So if it protects one student, are they not all worth it? I believe so. So if we're at $26,000 to make several toilets private, I think that's worth it, because we weren't voting on obscene amounts of money for renovations that were not needed. I see that these were needed. And as far as all the comments about disenfranchising and denigrating and these other things, I don't see where that happened. If we're focused on protecting all students, like I said, it's usually around 4,400. Employees of the district is give or take, what, 640? Oh, we're up around 700 now? Oh, okay. So it's up around 700. And we're talking teachers, administrators, support staff, bus drivers. We got to protect all of them too. We got to protect everybody. And in 3 townships, we have what, 30,000 people? It's a lot of people that weigh in. So we got to keep all of those things in mind, that everybody does need protected, and that's what I believe we're focused on. As far as transparency goes, I haven't seen this much transparency in a long time. When I was on the other side of the microphone, constantly going up to it, there was no responses. The meetings would end We're trying to improve that. I talk to people outside of meetings, out in the parking lot for an hour. People call me, I answer the phone and talk to them. It's not just in meetings. Individual board members talk to people all the time. And that doesn't make it a secret meeting. It's everybody working together as a community. So I would rather not respond to anything else on there and just say that when I'm in these school buildings, I see positive things all the time. And I'm glad we got this ViewSonic presentation today because I see exciting things in every school building I'm in. We have great teachers, we have great administrators, we have great support staff. So I'd rather just focus on the positive. I'm not going to respond to anything else. That's all I have.
Can I do another one?
Sure.
I just, something else I wanted to add, you know, as far as speaking and I miss my net back there. I'm personally welcome to hear everybody that comes up. Even if I disagree with you, this is your right. And as a public board, you absolutely get a chance to speak your mind. I do try and listen with an open mind. Sometimes I disagree. Since this is a recurring theme, we keep talking about how the board did when they were on the other side. Yes, we spoke a lot and I spoke a lot. I think you need to go back and check though what the topics were. So I will tell you most of my topics were on board on items that were on agenda. I did not come back and rehash things that the board decided on. If they made it, if I spoke out against something and the board decided on it anyway, I might hit it one more time the next board meeting, but I did not keep going on stuff. And, you know, if anything was repeated, I repeated transparency, which I've repeated up here. So other than that, I don't think that I harped on topics that much, but yeah, I spoke a lot as well as a lot of us did up here, which is again, why I believe you guys have the right to speak your mind as well.
Yes, I will be happy to post the results of the needs assessment. I'll just put that on the website tomorrow in the comprehensive plan section, so we can all have those. Mrs. Bauer's point, she said, could we have it digital? I'll be able to give it to you digitally. Let me just put it on the website tomorrow. So thank you for that.
I'll weigh in lastly. I was surprised to hear vociferous opponents that show up every meeting could criticize every step we take, call me their representative. I have no doubt I was not voted for by the critics who continually take this microphone. So I am willing to listen to your viewpoint, so long as you make a cogent argument that is not repetitive and been stated repetitively over and over at every meeting. Otherwise, you shouldn't expect a change of heart if you do not bring a new argument to the table. What I suspect is occurring here is the weaponization of the propaganda in the back of the room, that after this meeting, we'll interview only opponents of this board and not present an opposing argument as they have done repeatedly. The difference between journalism and propaganda is presenting both sides. The journalists in the back are here for you. So feel free to go out and give all your opposing arguments to them so they can blast it on the media for you. That's why you're here, is not to convince us.
That's not why we're here. We're here to do things for
Point of order.
Point of order. Go ahead, kick me out, I don't care.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
So adjourned.